Hi, this is Carol Baskin, and this is Cat Chat. This is Kat Albrecht from the Missing Pet Partnership. And when you told me what you guys did, I thought, wow, that is just amazing. I didn't know that technology even existed. So
Yeah.
tell me and tell everybody about what you do.
So, Missing Pet Partnership is a nonprofit organization, and we're based in Seattle, but we're actually a national nonprofit. And we're working to develop lost pet rescue services in communities across North America. And what we do is we train dogs to find lost pets. So, we train cat detection dogs that are trained just like a bomb dog or drug detection dog, any type of detector dog. We select dogs that love cats. We want a dog that wants to get the kitty but not get the kitty. And so we train the dogs to alert on the scent of a cat, and we basically go out and help cat owners search for their missing cats. Now, we also have scent tracking dogs that track the scent trail. Most often, those trailing or tracking dogs work lost dog investigations, but we have used tracking dogs on some lost cat cases. Mainly when you have like an indoor only cat that escapes outside, if it leaves a single scent trail from like the window where it jumped out to, that's point A, and then point B, wherever the cat has ended up, you can bring in a dog that's trained to sniff something with that cat scent on it, and they will follow the scent trail and locate where the cat is. So it's developing a service for cat and dog owners to help them look for and find their missing pets.
Dogs have been trained to sniff out all kinds of things
Yeah,
for as far back as I can recall, and yet I've never heard of them being used in this capacity before.
yeah. I started this back in 1997, and it shocked me that
Wow.
there was nobody out there doing this. And actually, my research, I found there were two other people in the country. One was in Georgia, one was in Washington State. And at the time, I was a police officer in Santa Cruz, California. And the reason I got interested in this was I was a cadaver dog trainer and bloodhound trainer and was a police officer at the time. And my bloodhound escaped and was lost in the woods. So suddenly, I'm the panicked pet owner needing to find my missing bloodhound. And I called the sheriff's office to have them come and help me look for AJ was his name, and they said, sorry, we can't. We're only sanctioned to look for missing people. And I thought, of all the times that they would call me and AJ to come out and search for a missing person in the woods at 2 in the morning, we would willingly do that. And yet they weren't willing to help me look for my missing police bloodhound. So I got on the phone, I called my friend. I had helped her train her golden retriever to track people. And we knew that her dog understood smell the pillowcase and follow the scent trail of the missing person, but we didn't know if she'd understand smell the stinky blanket and find my stinky bloodhound. But she did. Kaya was the name of the golden. She tracked down AJ in 20 minutes and found him, and that changed
Wow.
my life. That was like a paradigm shift in my life, and it's just really fascinating because through that experience, it gave me the idea, I know how to train dogs to find people. And we have drug detection, bomb detection, cancer detection, termite detection, bug bed now detection dogs, all kinds of detector dogs. Why don't we have cat detection dogs? And why aren't we going out and physically helping people search for their missing pets? And so it started with that idea. I tried to dismiss it for about 6 months because I was a police officer. I was actually in detectives at the time, and I knew I was going to like potentially be laughed out of law enforcement if I started talking pet detectives and goofy looking for missing pets. But I couldn't dismiss the idea, and I had the perfect dog for this line of work. It wasn't my
This is a fun,
bloodhound.
a perfect dog.
I had the perfect dog. Yeah, good point. Her name was Rachel, and she was my Weimaraner. She was my cadaver dog, but I had retired her because I was focusing at that time on the police bloodhounds. Was training a new bloodhound puppy, and my focus was as part of the SWAT team. I was using my bloodhounds to track criminals and not poodles. And but I went ahead and I thought I just couldn't get this idea out of my mind. And I had put it out there on the internet to some other search and rescue people, like, why isn't somebody else train a dog to find lost pets? And the normally chatty group suddenly went silent. And it was like, and then the one person that spoke up said, we know how long it takes to train a dog to do this. Why would we waste our time
Oh.
training when to find lost pets? And I thought, because what happens when your search and rescue dog goes missing? We need to develop a service. So that's when I just decided I'm going to try this on my own. I'm going to take Rachel, because I had already retired her, and just see if this can be done. And in her first 4 searches, she found 2 missing cats and 1 missing dog. And I wrote a book about this. It came out in 2004. It's called The Lost Pet Chronicles. And you can find it on Amazon. It's out of print right now, but I'm in the process of revising it and going to be republishing it under a different title soon. But you can still find that the story. It really follows Rachel from puppyhood and her using her on some police cadaver cases and then on some mostly cat cases and some missing dog cases. So she was really the foundation, that dog that I used to go out and do this, just in California, or Santa Cruz, California. But I quickly began to realize we need this in all communities. This needs to be everywhere. I mean, dogs can be trained to do this. Shelter dogs can be trained to do this. There's so many dogs in the shelter that have this capacity, that love cats, and I've kind of pioneered this technique of evaluating the right dog to be able to use for this work. I've authored another book. It's called Dog Detectives, Train Your Dog to Find Lost Pets. And so that's kind of the instructional guide that's out there on how to evaluate and train a dog in this.
And is this one still in print?
Yes, so this one's still in print. You can get that on Amazon, or it's published by Dogwise, dogwise.com. But I'm speaking at the conference here about the issue of untrained cats and the perceptions that kill cats in shelters in relation to people who have lost a cat. The things that cat owners think and believe in their minds oftentimes prevent them from searching the proper location or for the proper length of time, or they don't use the right techniques or the right tools to look for their missing cats. And there's just not a lot of good education out there through the shelters yet to really guide and teach people how and where to search for a missing cat. So over the past 15 years that I've been doing this kind of work now, I really patterned it after search and rescue for missing people, because with my bloodhounds, that's what I did. I actually started training search and rescue dogs in 1989, and I understood that there's a science to finding missing people. And like a search manager, when they have a missing person in the woods, they don't just send searchers going all willy-nilly calling the person's name. There's an organized plan and there's strategy that's involved. I mean, you can have a backpacker, a berry picker, and a deer hunter all lost in the same area of the woods, and they're all three missing people, but they behave differently when lost. They travel different distances, they have different equipment with them, they're out there in the woods for different reasons, and so they have been able to take and look at cases of deer hunters versus berry pickers that have been missing, and they develop search plans based on that study of their behavior. So I began looking at, okay, how far does a dog travel compared to a cat when lost? What's the difference?
How far do they
How
travel?
far do dogs travel, or a Chihuahua compared to a Great Dane? Is it the size of the dog or the size of their legs that dictates how far they go? So I began looking at the behavioral patterns of missing dogs and missing cats. And I'm just going to focus on cats and talk about, we've identified that there's a difference between how you would search for an outdoor access cat that suddenly vanishes from its territory versus the indoor only cat that jumps out a window or escapes out a door and is displaced. We call it displacement because when the cat is removed from its territory, they behave in a certain way, and basically they will hide in silence, and there's other behavioral patterns that we found. Some of these cats, depending on their temperament, will just hide for a short amount of time and then will ultimately break cover and come back to the front door or the window and jump back in the house. Many of the cats, though, that are on the other range of the scale, that are catatonic and fearful, may be called a former feral. The question that we use when we're asking the owner, how does your cat behave when a stranger comes in your home? And if they say it runs and hides under the bed and doesn't come out for hours, that's the type of cat that when they get displaced and escape outside, you're going to need a humane trap, because you want to magnify that behavior of, they're comfortable and fine in their territory in the apartment or in the house when the owner is there, or their family members, and they're happy and fine. But when something scares them and they run and hide in silence, then when they really get out in the big world and escape outside, you magnify that like by 40 times, and that's the behavior you're going to see. They're going to hide and they're not going to make a sound. And so what happens is, many of the people, when they lose their cat and they don't know that information, they're thinking oh my gosh, my cat got outside. I'm going to go look for him. And they're thinking my cat ran away. They're thinking like a cat would run away like a dog, and they don't. Cats are territorial, and when they become displaced, what they do is like if they jump out that window, they're like yippee, and then once they land on the ground, they're like, oh no, what do I do now? And they often then they'll look for the first place that they can dart in or under, and they'll hide there. And if they find a deck or an opening under the house, or a shed or something, or a garage door at the neighbor's house that's open, they will go in there and they will be silent. And so when the owner is clinking the tuna can and calling for their cat and they don't see the cat, they don't hear the cat, and nobody else sees the cat in the neighborhood, they're handing out flyers to the neighbors and the neighbors don't see the cat, it's because the cat is hunkered down and hiding. And oftentimes they're that way for weeks. We had a case of a displaced cat in Tacoma, Washington. It took us 4 months to catch the cat. And it was only 4 months. It was, but we knew he was out there. We stuck with our program or our plan because we knew he wasn't going to travel. We knew he had a skittish temperament, and we knew he was going to be hidden and hunkered down for a while. But a lot of the time, what our volunteers and the people that we train to do the pet detective work use is digital wildlife cameras. So they'll put a plate of food out there, and we instruct cat owners to do this too. If your indoor-only cat escapes outside, get a plate of food, put the digital wildlife camera and aim it at the plate. You come back the next morning, the plate is licked clean. You just pull the SD card from the camera and you look at the picture, raccoon, raccoon, raccoon. There's a calico, he's there. And once the cat owners see their cat on camera and know that it's right there in their own yard, and then, we coach them over the phone that you just now switch to the plate of food and the humane trap and working on, trapping and getting your cat back. So, a lot of what we do at Missing Pet Partnership is coaching people over the phone. So first of all, our website, it's missingpetpartnership.org. It's a fantastic website that shelters and rescue groups and TNR groups can link to and refer people to, because we have so many testimonials from people that they never even talked to us on the phone. They didn't hire a pet detective. They just read a lot of this behavior information that I'm talking about on our website, went and got a camera and got a trap, and then they searched differently, because initially they were calling their cat and walking all through the neighborhood and handing out flyers, but our website instructs them that your cat's likely nearby hiding, and you need to look in and under every hiding place. And many times they just shift that focus and they're like, oh my gosh, he's right there. Looking with a flashlight right at the eye shine of the cat's right there. So we've just helped a lot of people that way. But then secondly, we have volunteers that help over the phone, lost pet consultants, and we're always looking for more volunteers that want to be trained in how to coach people and encourage both dog and cat owners in how to conduct a search for their missing pet.
These people that are answering the phone, are they virtual, or are they working from an office, or both?
No, it's virtual. Yeah, we're a national organization, but we have no facility, no staff, no facility. So we got one gal from Canada right now that's being trained to answer our phones, and she may only be taking the Canadian phone calls. I'm not positive on that, but basically we've got people we're in Seattle, and then the gal that manages our team is in Massachusetts, and so you can live anywhere, but you really have to have a desire to help people, because you're going to be dealing with, people.
And they're going to be frantic.
And they're full of fear, and they're going through the stages of grief, and many of them are wanting to give up too soon. And so what you're really doing is encouraging them, but you're also educating them. But people are people, and sometimes it can be difficult to deal with people that are not in a good place. But we've had people that have had to make a choice between conducting a search for their missing pet and going to a funeral, or they just took their dog to a boarding kennel and they were going on a cruise, and then the kennel called to say that your dog just escaped in the woods, and they've got to decide, do I search for the dog or go on this cruise? And all kinds of circumstances. It's not easy when pets go missing, but we are looking at launching a program where what we envision doing is similar to what we launched in Seattle back in 2009. From 2008 to 2012, we ran a program where it was an all-volunteer lost pet search and rescue team. And again, we're patterning this after, just as my background was in search and rescue for missing people, the concept that people deserve to have assistance to come out and help them when their dog or cat is missing. And so what we're looking at doing is partnering with rescue groups, shelters, and even if there's a TNR group, even if there's a group that good grief has the equipment already, they've got the knowledge of the trapping and they've got the traps. And I'm not sure if many of the TNR groups are using cameras, wildlife cameras or not, but there's such an advantage to using the wildlife camera with the baited humane trap, especially when you're trying to catch somebody's missing cat that may be trap shy. If you only put the trap out there, and for that's 5-6 days the owner has the trap out there, but they're not watching what's happening and what's coming up to the trap, they may not realize that their cat is coming up to their cat is there, it's hiding in their yard, but it's too afraid to go in that trap, and they should be switching to a drop trap. And we've just had so many cases where we've realized that having the camera there and showing us that the cat is there is just not going into the trap, and then we need to change. And we'll do things like sometimes coach them into using their house as a trap by cracking their door open and smearing cat food, dribbling it up the steps and then into the house, and having the owner sit behind the door at like 2 in the morning, and then when they hear the cat crunching on the food, then they slam the door closed and their cat's back in the house. But where their cat was too afraid to go into the trap, but it's willing to come back into the house. So so we're looking to partner with groups that are interested in developing and launching a team, and where we would come and help to test and evaluate shelter dogs in a community, so that we can hopefully get 1 to 3 shelter dogs trained in cat detection work that this group would then be able to take, and they would also be trained through our training program at Missing Pet Partnership. And so we've done that in Seattle with the volunteer team in Seattle, but we're looking at this fall launching a program where we will start and offering that in other communities across North America. So,
how long does it take to train a dog?
It's a really good question. To train a dog to track a scent trail, which is the scent discrimination trailing. It's the same method I used to teach police bloodhounds. Smell the pillowcase, follow the scent trail, ignore all other human scent out there, find just that one person. We train them, smell this collar of this dog or this bedding of this dog, ignore all other dogs that are out there. That can take 18 months, even up to 2 years to train a dog to do that. That is the most difficult type of training you can train. It's scent discrimination trailing, and it just takes a lot of training. But we do have people that have trained their dogs to do that. What we're talking about is a program with the cat detection dogs. You could have a cat detection dog trained up in 2 to 3 months. Because what you're looking for is a dog that gives a natural response, that when it comes up to the cat, and like I have one of the target cats, or we call it a target cat, my cat Cheeto, he's trained to crate quietly, and so we'll put him in a Sherpa bag, which is like a mesh black bag that just looks like a little suitcase sitting there, right? Well, a big suitcase, because Cheeto's kind of big. Anyway, and then so I'll just bring out, when I'm evaluating a dog, I just have the handler just lead the dog up to the bag, and the dogs, they come up to the bag, they're thinking it's a suitcase, but they don't realize it's a cat until they get their noses right there, and you can see in their body language the moment that they recognize that they're in a cloud of cat scent and that it's a cat. And the couple responses that we get are, the majority of dogs will have an aversion. They'll leap back because they're like, oh crap, it's a cat, because they're afraid they're going to get scratched, right? Or you can tell these dogs have been swatted at a cat and they're afraid. The second response is that the dog, oh, it's a cat. It kind of wags its tail or ear perk or whatever, and then it kind of goes off and does something else. Oh, there's something else more interesting. That is not the drive that we want in the dog. The third type, and we don't see this that often, but I've evaluated probably about 4 dogs that have done this. They want to get the kitty. We want dogs that want to get the kitty, but not get the kitty. And so those would be ones that would be like sucker punching at the bag, and Cheeto's protected in there and he's fine. And we don't just let the dog maul the bag, but if we see that the dog's starting to do behavior that's wanting to get the kitty, then that dog's disqualified. The ones that pass, and I would say 1 out of every 14 or 16 dogs are the ones that when they're there, they're like, it's a kitty. And they're just riveted on that bag, and their tail's wagging, and then they're whining, because we want them to give a physical response. Because when we're going yard to yard to yard to yard on a search, because we have the cat owner get permission from their neighbors, And then we go into backyards, front, side, and backyards, and oftentimes we're out there for 2 or 3 hours searching every conceivable hiding place, you know, where the cat may be injured, deceased, or hiding in fear under a deck or under house. And we'll be telling the dog, check this, check this. So the dog is just a readable tool. But if they're like under this deck, if there's a cat under there, I want to know that the dog isn't motivated enough with cats that when we take the dog by there, if it smells cat, it's going to stay there wagging its tail or whining or whatever it does. And so,
Oh, interesting.
So you're just taking that natural behavior and then you're doing some clicker training. We train them on cat decomp scent because on many of the cases, we're finding at times that the cat's been taken by a predator or the cat is deceased or whatever. But and that's the hard part. But you know, we bring closure to people too.
Right.
I mean,
That means a lot.
It means a lot. It means a lot to the people that we've helped. And the other thing I wanted to mention, I had started talking about the indoor only cat, and that is very different. So that displacement, you know, these cats that escape outside and hide in silence, that is a very different scenario than the outside access cat that suddenly vanishes. That means something has happened to your cat. That means something has happened to interrupt its normal behavior of coming home. So we've determined that there's 8 probability categories of what can happen when an outdoor access cat disappears. It could be unintentionally displaced, meaning it climbed onto a U-Haul trailer or climbed in a service vehicle and was accidentally driven out of the area. There can be intentional displacement, a neighbor that hates cats that set a humane trap and trapped it and took it to a shelter or dumped it. It could have been killed by a predator. It could have been rescued by somebody. I mean, there's these different categories and that we take a look at when we're interviewing and helping people to, you know, take a look at what most likely happened to your missing cat. And just like when I used to be a police officer and investigate a burglary, every case was different, you know, and you'd look for evidence and you would look for evidence, look for clues, look for, you know, who may have been, you know, what was the motive, and usually in theft it's for money and all that. But with missing cat cases, we are able to coach people in the fact that the primary way that you should be looking for your cat when it's missing is to get permission from your neighbors to search their property. And that's not happening. So what's happening is that people are walking and talking to their neighbors, ringing the doorbell and saying, my cat's missing. Pretend this is a flyer, right? You know, my cat's missing. If you see my cat, call me. And they hand them the flyer. And that's fine, but your neighbor is not going to get on their belly and crawl under their house. They're not even going to go into their backyard to look for your cat. And yet that's where a missing cat is most likely to be. If it's in its territory and it was beat up by another cat and it's injured, if it suddenly has some type of illness or sickness or was hit by a car or something happened to it, those cats are often in their territory, and again, the behavior of a sick cat, an injured cat, or a panicked cat is that they hide in silence, and we call that the silence factor. And so many times these owners are getting in their car and they're giving a flyer to all their neighbors, getting in the car, driving 20 miles across town to the shelter, looking in the cages, which they need to be doing. But then that's the extent of their search, and internet or you know, putting it on a lost cat website and then putting it on Facebook is going to people all over the country. And yet the target search area that they need to search, the highest probability of the search area where they need to search is their house and 5 houses on either side or behind them, because their cat may be injured, it may be trapped and injured and needing to get to a vet. Many of the deceased cats that we found were within a 2-house radius of the owner's home. Mm-hmm. All of them were concealed. They were either under a deck, under a house, or in brush. Many of them were in their outdoor litter box, because when we crawled under there to retrieve the cat, there was cat feces all over the place. So when you think about it, it's where they're used to going. It's usually under something, it's shady or it's dark or whatever, and it's familiar to them, and they will often go there, and they will often die there because the owners aren't being told, or they don't know that that's the type of search that they need to conduct. So we do a lot of coaching of that.
I may be going down a rabbit hole here that isn't something you do, although in California you guys do have a lot of bobcats. We do a lot of bobcat rehab and rescue and release. Mm-hmm. And often a cat has been hit by a car but is capable of getting away from us in the woods.
Yeah.
And so many times I thought, man, I wish we had a dog
Yeah.
who could find this bobcat.
Yeah.
Hunters do it, I assume. So I
Yeah.
wonder how hard that would be, because it would always be a different bobcat, but it'd always be a bobcat that I'm looking for.
Yeah. You could probably train just a bobcat detection dog. And train one, yeah, because you're not going to have a scent article, so you're not going to necessarily have a tracking dog that would track a bobcat. But I know that there are, like, Fish and Game has trained, oh, good grief, out in Seattle they have a whale poop detection dog. Yeah, that they put out for the orca whales that are out there. I mean, when whales poop, I guess maybe it floats, I don't know, but they have a dog that they put in a boat, and the dog will alert when they get over, because they're trying to locate the pods of where the whales are, like maybe
Wow.
sonar would work or something. I don't know. But anyway,
Dogs are more fun.
this dog loves the job because, hey, it's a whale poop. Cool. Yeah. So, I mean, there's such a need. Even if we don't have, pet detectives with tracking dogs or the cat detection dogs available in all communities, just the information on Missing Pet Partnership's website is real critical. I actually, through my own website, now Missing Pet Partnership is a nonprofit organization and is looking at forming that program where, again, partnerships with shelters or organized 501c3s. We will look at partnering, and funding will need to be raised in order to train the dogs and train the people and train the teams up. And so I don't know how many teams we're going to be able to launch doing that. And again, I'm interested in hearing from people that are interested in doing that. But I also, through my website, catalbrecht.com, have a training program where I train individual people to do pet detective work. So that ranges anywhere from somebody who's like a pet sitter, dog walker, somebody who's already has a pet-related business that wants to add pet detective services to their business. They can take my training course.
Is this an online course, or do you
Yeah,
go
it's
in
actually,
person?
no, I used to teach it in person. It used to, when I started this in 2005, it was an in-person 6-day course. But then when the economy tanked and I started having, I actually taught a class in Orlando and Boston and Dallas, and but then when the economy fell apart, I couldn't get people registered and I didn't have marketing help. And so instead, when I had formed Missing Pet Partnership, I sidelined the national training program, moved to Seattle, and that's when we focused on showing proof of concept. What can we do when we take a team of volunteers and we spent 18 months training all the dogs, and then we went out in the community, and oh my gosh, we have many of the cases that are now, that I debrief, that I'll talk about in the class that I teach tomorrow, and in the training course, all of them, not all of them, but many of those cases come from what we did in Seattle. Cases that we solved, techniques that we pioneered, and things that we learned, and things that we're now going to pass on to other people. But so anybody can take that course, again, through catalbrecht.com. And even if you're wanting to increase your knowledge on how to help people find missing pets, so I get people that shelter volunteers that take the training. We are now training a lot of private investigators, because in some states, like I believe the state of Florida, the state of California, and the state of Michigan are 3 of the primary ones, but it varies in a lot of states, that in order to make a business, to be to charge a fee to go out and look for people's missing pets, that you have to be a licensed private investigator. Because in their wording it says, to look for people's lost or stolen property, you have to be a licensed PI.
Well,
and so in some of the states, we're losing some pet detectives, so we're focusing on training more private investigators. But
is that only if there's a fee involved?
yes,
Oh.
that's what it says. So if you're doing this as a nonprofit, so here's an idea. If you have a TNR group, and again, you already have the equipment, you've got the humane traps, there are so many cat owners in your community right now that are losing their cats that could use your help and your services, and you can rent out your equipment to help raise and fund your TNR work, to pay for the food, to pay for the surgeries, or what have you. You have the potential that you're going to garner community support from people that might not really care about the feral cat problem, but their indoor cat is missing and they need help. And so by developing and offering the MAR services and being listed through our website, and us being able to promote, because we get the calls from the people from around the country, because a lot of shelters are linking to our website, and people are going to our website to look for any group in their area that offers lost pet recovery services. So if you were to come and take the training and then be listed on the website, you have the potential. Oh, where'd that come from? I lost my voice. You have the potential of being able
There's water
to.
right here if you
Hey,
like.
yeah. You have the potential of being able to offer a service that is going to prevent a cat from ending up in a feral cat colony or the shelter. You're going to be helping a family get their cat back home. And, you know, like when we rented our traps out, we rented out for $25 a week. So you're getting your traps being used, and it's being used for a great cause. And I cannot tell you that great feeling when you get the phone call from the cat owner. Oh my gosh, she's home, she's in the trap. And it's just, it's such a needed service, and yet so many cats are ending up in shelters and in feral cat colonies because the pet owners aren't being told how and where to search. They're not being coached. They're giving up quickly. They believe that a coyote killed my cat, and yet I could go on for hours, but I won't. There are, yes, coyotes do kill some cats, but more cats are killed because of the fear of coyotes, because cat owners stop searching for their cat. They're killed when they end up in the shelter than they are actually killed by coyotes. We've had many cases where we've recovered cats that have been out in the woods and where we've caught the coyotes on our digital wildlife camera. They're out there, but they were not raised on killing cats, and so they're not cat killers. There's certain pockets in certain areas where you know that you're always finding cats killed in this particular area, but there's other areas, wooded areas, where the cats aren't killing, or the coyotes aren't killing the cats.
It's got to be the toughest prey to take if you're a coyote. There's got to be a lot of other better choices for the cat.
Well, you know, I mean, if the coyote is raised in an area, and again, if the mother raised it and fed it cat, and it's in a populated area, then it could end up becoming, and probably would end up becoming, a cat killer. But there's so many areas where there are coyotes that have an abundance of other type of food sources that they don't even, we've got it on camera. They don't necessarily kill the cats. And we've caught many cats, again, that survive in coyote areas. So we really just need to do a lot more education for people that not all coyotes are cat killers.
It was in the class that they had this morning where they were talking about some of these humane traps now have the ability to alert you on your cell phone when they've caught something. I've not seen these before. Have you?
I don't know about the humane traps, but yes, there are digital wildlife cameras that do that. Like a Moultrie makes one, and it's like around $300 or so. But yeah, it will send you it will text you the picture, like within a minute or so of the picture being taken, and you just put on your phone. And so yeah, we have a lot of pet detectives that are starting to get those cameras with the traps. So I haven't heard about a trap itself doing it.
Yeah, we set a lot of humane traps because not humane traps, trail cams, because when we release cats, we want to make sure, release bobcats, we want to make sure that they're doing okay out there, and we want to see them pass by a few times and know that that's a safe area. But I didn't realize there was one that would actually alert us.
I believe, actually, I don't know that it actually is a Moultrie. I think it's called Trail Cam Pro. Trail, CAM, and then PRO. I think if you Google that, you may find it. And then they were saying that in mountainous areas, because it does require cell phone, I think you have to pay, you maybe have to have like cell service with it or something, so there is a little bit of cost involved. But somebody was saying in a mountainous area it isn't so great, but then they actually sell a booster that you can get, like a booster antenna that you can put on it. So,
well, here in Florida, so it's nice and flat.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, probably in 5 years from now, probably all trail cams will do that. But yeah.
Was your organization originally called Missing Pet Partnership? Because it sounds like the partnership part of that is kind of newly
No, the intent has always been to form partners. So yes, the name has been. We were founded in, how many years? 2001. December 2001 was when we were founded. And then it wasn't until 2002 that we actually got active, and that was when I was in Fresno, California. Got active on forming the organization and getting board members. But during the 7 years that I was in California, that was the time that I was able to develop the training course and author the 2 books and try to get the organization off the ground. But it was in Central California, in Fresno, California, just not very animal oriented, not philanthropic. And I realized if we ever want to get this organization going, we need to move to another area of the country. And I just loved the Pacific Northwest and knew that Seattle was where God was calling me to go. And so I went up there and And right away, within, I mean, I hadn't even unpacked the boxes and I already had 25 volunteers. And we started training the dogs. And so once I got up there, and that was 2008, then things began to develop and take off. And, you know, we've really developed a good reputation again because of the website being so effective and because of that presence that we had in Seattle for the 3 years where people were just like, call Missing Pet Partnership, call Missing Pet Partnership. And so now it's kind of strange because now that we've changed away from that local program. There's still a lot of people in Seattle that are calling us for help. Well, now we actually have 3 active full-time pet detectives that are independent, have their own businesses, that are continuing to work searches with their dogs. And then we then have shifted our focus back to, okay, now on a national level. So, you know, what can we do on a national level? And it gets back to that, you know, partnerships with shelters and rescue groups and forming these teams. Because what I had to ask back when I first had the idea of, okay, we need to train teams to go out and look for missing pets, but who am I going to train? Is it going to be, who will offer these services? Is it going to be through veterinarians? Will it be through shelters? Is it going to be individual people? Will it be dog trainers? You know, who, because this was so new. And I heard from everybody or from different people, oh, vets would never do that, and shelters aren't progressive enough. And this, you know, so everybody was poo-pooing it. It's a great idea, but they won't do it. You know, so what happened was when my book came out in 2004, I was getting nowhere with shelters and nowhere with veterinarians, but I had a lot of individual people that said, I want to train my dog to do that. And it was like, okay, well then come to my training class and I will train individual people. And so that's kind of the path that we had been on, but again, then that was interrupted then when we launched the program. So we've just kind of been through this trying to figure things out. And I believe that now, because we have the reputation and because we can point back to and look at our statistics from when we had the team in 2008 to 2012, we can say, this is the percentage of animals that we helped to recover, and these are the things that we learned, and you can do this in your community too. And so I think that we're in such a better position now to launch this national training program than we were in the past.
And going to these conferences too, I think that's a wonderful opportunity for you to reach people like me
Yeah.
who had absolutely no idea.
Yeah, we're really, and then like I'm going to be speaking later this year at a pet sitters conference. So again, looking for people that are already have a pet business that are wanting to do this. Because there is a need for the volunteer teams to do it, but good grief, how many cats go missing in one community a day? A lot. So how many would a team be able to go and look for? It depends on how many volunteers you have and how committed are they. It is, I have to tell you, it's really fascinating. If you love investigative work, but you have to understand that when you go out on these searches, you're dealing, again, with people that are filled with grief and fear. If you find their cat deceased, it's not fun. I mean, it's really traumatic oftentimes for the pet owner. And so we're looking for people, you know, we're developing this as a profession, but through my catalbreak.com, I'm training people that want to do this to be a professional for-profit pet detective that are going to charge a fee and go out with a search dog and do this in your community. But then we are also trying to hit areas that there may not be a big enough demand for somebody to do this as a full-time business, but if there's a shelter or a rescue group or a group of volunteers that want to form a team in their community, then they could do this as a service. But even being a nonprofit, you could still do it as a fee-based service. Like when we did this as Missing Pet Partnership, we would take pro bono cases. There were many cases where we went out, and in some cases we spent like that one cat, BB, the one that I mentioned that it took us 4 months to capture, and we never got paid for that. And so there's ones that we would take on as just a challenge of, we know we're going to get this cat, or this. There was an Iditarod sled dog that was missing, and it took us 6 weeks to finally capture this dog, and we didn't get paid for that. But in general, when we would get calls from people, our service fee was $250 for us to come out with a search dog and the equipment and the volunteers and spend 2 or 3 hours out there helping you look for your missing cats. And most people were able to afford that. That's less than most vet bills. But so that is a way for groups to be able to raise money for their TNR work or their rescue group work, you know.
You would think that the community goodwill alone would make it worthwhile for organizations to do that because that gets them press. It brings
Yes.
attention to the other things that they do. So
Yeah.
they may not make any money on that. It's their loss leader.
Yeah.
But man, what a wonderful thing to be able to offer.
Yeah. And you're able to, like I said, you're developing potential donors for the other work that you're doing. So, I mean, that's one thing that we have found at Missing Pet Partnership, where we just have a lot of people that are just so grateful. And that's what I learned early on back in 1997 when I first started going out with Rachel on cases, that the people were so grateful that somebody cared enough to come out and help them look. Even in the cases where we didn't find anything. But even on some of those cases, when you go out with a search dog and if you're able to search that cat's territory and determine the cat is no longer there, then that's information. That's actually, okay, we didn't find remains, so the cat wasn't taken by a predator. The cat wasn't in the territory, so maybe it's been chased out of the territory, or maybe it was accidentally removed from the area, so you look at other avenues. But
When you first started doing this, you had a history in training dogs, and
yeah.
I think you said you were looking for a dog. So how did you make the shift to cats? Or how and why did you make the shift to cats?
Really, it's how to switch the cats. Because I remember the first time that when I had the idea, I didn't, when I had, when AJ had been tracked down by the golden retriever, Kea was her name, I didn't just stop and think, why aren't we training dogs to track lost dogs? I immediately recognized that cats are missing too, and that there's a need for both. And I think probably I was convinced with my dog Rachel that it was possible because she loved kitties. Because when the first time that I went and I hid my cat Yogi, I put Yogi in a cat carrier and went and hid Yogi in the woods, and I took the tuft of Yogi's fur and I put it under Rachel's nose. I said, Rachel, take scent. Because that's the same thing I used to smell the gun, find the gun, I have her find different evidence. So I smell the cat. I said, Rachel, take scent, find the kitty, search. She looked up at me like, yes, finally you understand what I've wanted to look for all along. Because I'd be out there wanting her, having her search for, I'd be on a homicide case trying to recover bones with her, and she'd be out there, oh, look, it's a cat. I'm trying to be all macho copy, right? And my dog's out there finding a cat. So I knew right away that she would watch squirrels and she would find a polecat, a skunk on a couple of cases. But I think it was because of her love for cats that I realized that because she was so easy to read, she would whine or her tail would just wiggle when she would smell cat. And we just found a lot of cats. So yeah, and it was recognizing that, and again, I just have such a passion that there's so many shelter dogs that could be trained to do this. There's so many shelter cats that have that, we call it curious clown temperament, that are just fearless around dogs, that, you could take these cats anywhere, and we want to train a lot of those cats to be target cats. Because once we start this program, we're going to be working on evaluating and then helping the shelter to train the dog, but they also need to have a cat that we like in our Seattle program, we have 3 target cats that we have to rotate, and when they train every week, they need to take, they're never able to use a whole bunch of cats because you really have to have a cat that won't meow. And these cats, again, they're trained to just be in the crate and just be silent, and they'll see the dog coming up and looking around for them, and the dog comes up and finds them, and it's cool. Yeah. So, in fact, Cheeto, my cat, I have to give a plug to my cat Cheeto. He was on Animal Planet. They have a show called Must Love Cats. And so, because I pitched and said, hey, he's a cat with a job. He's trained to crate quietly. So they came out and filmed us. So that's on my catalbrecht.com website. If you go there, you'll see a picture of Cheeto. He's a big orange cat. He's laying on his back. So you just click on that. You can watch that episode.
Oh, so, wow. I'll have to do that. Yeah. So you say you're writing a book. What do you see for the future?
So, for the future.
Pet partnerships.
Well, for the future of Missing Pet Partnership, I see again the expansion of that program on a national level, and the training of volunteers and the teams. For myself, with my business, I've got a business called Canine Pet Trackers, and I don't have a website yet. It's on my catalbrecht.com website, all that training information. But so I kind of see myself doing a dual thing. That part of me is going to be still, I'll always be the founder and involved, and I'm permanently on the board, I think, at Missing Pet Partnership, to be developing the shelter end and the volunteer end of lost pet recovery. But then in my own Canine Pet Trackers, I see the development of more the training of the individual pet detectives that want to offer these services, and developing this on an international level. We're already training some people in Canada. I also, I teach a day-long workshop for shelters and coalitions and rescue groups. It's called Strategies for Lost Pet Recovery, where I basically, for an 8-hour day, talk about both lost dog behavior and lost cat behaviors and recovery tips. And so I see a lot more traveling. We're already traveling about twice a month now, once or twice a month. And then writing, I'm doing
where do you fit that
in?
Yeah,
I know.
On the plane.
Well, it's one of my passions too. It's like, well, where do I find the time? I just finished a novel called Bloodhound Love, and it's so good. It's one I've been working on for several years. But it's about a teenage girl that has a bloodhound named Jammer that she wants to use to track people, but she ends up using the bloodhound to track lost pets. And so it's just a really, really fun read. And so I'm working to get an agent on that. I already have an agent I'm doing a rewrite of the Lost Pet Chronicles, but it's going to be a spiritual memoir. It's going to tell the story, I had like this supernatural experience many years ago that kind of changed the course of my life. And I didn't put that in the Lost Pet Chronicles, but now I'm going to be putting that in this new book and updating. So like the Lost Pet Chronicles ended when I was still in Fresno in like 2002. And so it didn't include all of the work and all the cases in Seattle. So now this new book will include a lot of new cases and stuff, but have kind of that God moment stuff in it, and kind of just, so I'm really excited about that book. So actually that one I've had with an agent, has had that with several publishers for about 6 months. And then I'm ultimately wanting to write a book on lost cat behavior, for shelter workers, and so probably a lot more writing in the future. But
what do you charge for an 8-hour day-long
the
conference?
8-hour day-long conference is like $2,500. So that, and then travel expenses. So it has to be something where, you've got an organization that is either well-funded or that is putting on a community training, like they're going to bring me to Dallas, and it's for a coalition that they're going to go ahead and I think like charge $35 a person or something like that in order to have the training. I'm not positive on that, but at least up in Toronto, they're talking about doing like $35 for a person. That would cover all the expenses. The MAR class, the 10-week training course is $600.
Is that an acronym? I've heard you say that twice.
I'm sorry. Sorry, talking in acronyms. Missing animal response. So that's the term that we gave of what we call what we do. Some people call it, and I still do at times, call it pet detective work. But we call it missing animal response. We didn't call it rescue because the word rescue means more foster adoption than it does mean in search and rescue for missing people. It means the search part, and then the rescue is when you find them and you down a canyon, and then you put them in a litter and hoist them up. And so what we realized is when we're
crawling under a house and putting them in a carrier is not rescue.
Well, it is. And that's why I was like, well, we can't use the word rescue, because if we say rescue, people are going to think fostering adoption, or there's so much rescue. And so we had to come up with a different word, and we figured, well, we're responding. And that's one thing that a lot of, that isn't being done, is that type of service of responding out there to help people do the search. I mean, the way, and again, I've just been focusing on the cat searches, but if you were interviewing me about lost dogs, it would be an entirely different, I would have told you a whole bunch of different things, because it's very different how you would look for a dog.
I bet it would be.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate the fact that you tailored this to our cat-loving audience.
Yeah, and with dogs, you're not really looking for the dog, but you're looking for people, because somebody has likely found that dog or has the dog. So it's all about marketing. With cats, you most likely have a cat that's hiding nearby, or that's trapped, or is not able to come home, or has even been chased out of its territory. And if that happens, it's often hiding in fear. So it can be in its own neighborhood, but it can be 5 houses down, but hiding in fear. And so it's more about getting into those yards and looking and using humane traps and wildlife cameras, and just focusing your search area and encouraging people to keep doing that. And one other behavior that I just realized that would be helpful for your audience to know about. We have identified that there is a thing, what we call the threshold factor, which is that many cats will hide initially and ultimately break recover. And typically we see this in like the 7 to 14 day range. And sometimes it's more closer to 10 or 12 to 14 days. That many of these cats, they'll jump out the window and then, oh no, they land on the ground and then they go and they hide under the neighbor's deck. So they're just at the house next door. But the owner is going by calling kitty, kitty, kitty on the first day, and the cat's just under there watching them, going back and forth. And then by the 5th day, the owner's kitty, kitty, they're clinging that spoon on the tuna can, right? And then by the 7th day, oh, kitty, I'm never going to see kitty again. And I kid you not, I've had at least 2 cases where this has happened, where the person is then just sat down, and then they started crying, and then they hear this,
because cats can't
the
stand
cat's
it when
right
you
there in
cry.
the bush watching them. Because the cats will reach a threshold point. We think it's thirst. It may be hunger, but we think it's thirst. That they've been hidden there in that same spot. The longer that they stay there, they deposited more scent there. They usually defecate or urinate right in that area where they're hiding there. And they don't necessarily leave that spot because they've been so afraid, but the longer they're there, the more comfortable they get with that new spot. That becomes their new territory. And they ultimately reach this threshold point where they're like, you know what? I'm thirsty, I'm tired, this is baloney, and then they meow. So what you'll hear is oftentimes people say, well, my cat ran away, but then he came back home. No, it's often that he jumped outside and hid, and you didn't realize he was right there all along, but it took 7 to 10 to 14 days before the cat finally made itself visible, either by meowing, or if you're using humane traps when you're coaching people, and many times we get people, they're just completely undone and frantic, and we're telling them, get a trap and put the trap, and then they call us back and say, okay, I've had it out there for 2 days and I haven't, and he's not gone in the trap and I haven't caught him on camera. And we're just advising them, don't panic. It may be that he's hidden somewhere, but he's not hungry and he hasn't reached that threshold. So oftentimes, when we're coaching people, they need to know that just because you're not catching him on camera doesn't mean that he's not right there.
You've obviously amassed an enormous amount of information about how cats think. And I'm sure a lot of that has come through all of these different cases that you've had. Did you have a really good grounding in that when you first started going out looking for cats? And if so, where did that come from?
Yeah, really, where that came from was the science of finding missing people. Because in fact, I don't remember the day, and it was, I guess I don't remember the date. I remember I was still a police officer, and I went out on a search for an Alzheimer's patient with my bloodhound. But part of the work that I did was I would first go out, and I was part of what's called the hasty team, where I would send my bloodhound and try to track down the person, and then if my bloodhound lost the scent, I would come back, load him up in my truck, and then I would go into the command van where I worked what was called plans. It's the position in the search management structure. You would have like an incident commander. Well, what plans did was I would sit down and I would look at a topographical map of the area, and I would say, okay, based on my knowledge of Alzheimer's behavior, I know that they typically only travel like, a 2-block radius, and they typically go downhill, or whatever the information was, and I would plot out where I was going to send teams. Okay, well, we've got a river not far away. I'm going to put a dog team on either side of the bank to just make sure that the victim didn't end up in the water, and we're going to segment and put another dog team over in this area, and we're going to send some ground pounders over here. So we would have an organized strategy. And I remember I went in on that case, and it was about 2 in the morning, and I thought, because I had just been looking for a missing Italian Greyhound, I thought, that's when I asked that question. I know how far an Alzheimer's patient will go, but how far will a Chihuahua go? How far will a Great Dane go? How far will a cat go? That's what got me starting to think about, I need to research lost pet behavior. And when I Googled it back then, there was nothing. There was nothing. Now you
Well,
Google.
there was hardly an internet.
Oh, but yeah, this is very true. That was true. And so this was probably 1998 or 99. And I remember, though, that I thought there is a book out there called Analysis of Lost Person Behavior. And I'm sure that now there's a lot of other books on the topic, but I remember thinking, we need to study this. Somebody needs to study this. But when I would come to animal conferences, like when I came to, for a while I worked at American Humane Association, and it's like about 8 months I worked there, but I went and spoke at one of the conferences, and people, when I would say pet detective, people were like, huh? They were thinking, like, are you like some weirdo? But then when they would hear me speak and talk about lost cat behavior or lost dog behavior, they were like, oh my gosh, this is so incredible. Everybody needs to hear this. And I'm like, write that on your evaluation. But it really,
Well, I agree with them.
well, it's very true. It's once you hear it and once you understand it, it makes so much sense. And just the key is just educating. So just it's the people that own cats that are just clueless, that have no idea, and that they're driving down to the shelter and they're checking for maybe a week or two, and then they're adopting a new kitten and giving up. And then that cat that they had, it's not abducted by aliens. It goes somewhere, and guess where it goes? It ends up in the shelter 2 to 4 months after it went missing, and the owner has stopped looking. It happens every day, all the time. And my passion is that we just got to do more education. We got to get more people trained, and so I just love to train more groups that want to develop something through Missing Pet Partnership, or individuals, or even somebody with a group that wants to get the training through me. Come to the website.
Are you looking at technologies that are available now, like facial recognition that we have with humans for pets, so that people could find their pet in a shelter months after they've given up looking for them?
So I know that those apps are out there, but our focus we haven't really tied into any of that. I mean, I know I've seen that there's a couple different applications like that. I think that the utilization of that is going to be dependent upon somebody having that app, or having that, on their phone, and then using it on an animal that they find, or if shelters were to use that. I'm not positive if shelters are going in that direction or not. I don't know enough about it to know, how effective it is. So
I know shelters are starting to take pictures of animals as they come in for adoption purposes. Yeah. So it seems like if that technology's there, then it would be an easy overlay.
It just seems to me that when you look at a short-haired black cat,
well, yeah, there's
I
that.
just don't get it. I don't know how, or I'm sorry, a Doberman or a Rottweiler, to me, they all look alike. German Shepherd. I mean, some of the breeds, it's like, to me, how can you tell the difference? How could it, but maybe, I don't know. So like I'm saying, I'm just speaking because I'm not educated in the area of it. But I'm certainly, if things move in that direction, or if we hear and learn that those are highly effective tools, just like with the wildlife cameras, the tagging is one thing that we do for lost dogs, and it's using these neon window markers to tag the back of your car with lost dog information and a picture of your lost dog. That, again, it gets back to when you're looking for a missing dog, it's all about marketing. It's finding the people in your community who either saw your dog or knows who has your dog. And so you're doing this massive marketing with neon colors, and we'll have people doing a lost dog protest out on an intersection, like how people hold campaign signs before elections. We go out with these big lost dogs, so lost,
wow,
lost Sheltie, and it grabs the attention, because an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, not blue, but a white 8.5 by 11 flyer, which most people are making those up for their missing dogs or cats. People don't see them. There's a thing called it's called inattentional blindness, and the hypothesis is there is no perception without attention, meaning if you're not paying attention to something, you don't perceive it, meaning it's invisible. It's like it's not even there. So if I don't notice your flyer that says lost Sheltie or lost Rottweiler or lost Orange Tabby, but you've posted these out there, but I don't notice it because I'm driving and talking on my cell phone, or texting and driving, which I don't, but I'm driving and having a conversation with somebody, but I don't see that, then in your mind as a pet owner, you're thinking, well, I already put up posters. Well, these are flyers meant to hand to people, which is fine. But the posters that we recommend and have on our website are neon, and they're like this big, and it's a reward, lost cat, and then a picture of the cat, and then the information and the phone number, and that's it. It's not a whole paragraph of needs medication and missing from this intersection. It's just a simple, big, huge poster that everybody can read when they drive by. And we've reunited more missing cats and missing dogs just with the posters than we have with the search dogs. Goodness. And so, yeah, it's huge.
Speaking of this unintentional blindness,
inattentional blindness.
Inattentional.
Yeah.
Nobody would notice a cat in the neighborhood. Some people might notice a dog running
You
loose.
are so correct, and that's one thing I teach in the course is you can have a sidewalk, and here's another interesting fact. You could have a mixed breed dog trotting down the sidewalk, and a lot of people will just look at it, they'll see it, but they'll think, oh, it probably belongs in the neighborhood, or it's, they're not necessarily going to pull over and rescue it. Now, I'm not talking about like you or me, the normal rescue-minded person that comes to conferences like this that's going to pull over and stop traffic. Okay. I'm talking about because you have to think in terms when you lose a pet and it gets out there, you have to think in terms of the normal, non-animal oriented person, because oftentimes those are the people that are going to see the dog. So many of the times those people will see that dog, but then they're just, it probably belongs in the neighborhood. But if on the same sidewalk you had an old English sheepdog or an Afghan hound, I'm thinking of a purebred that you can recognize, oh, that's like a show dog, or that's an unusual breed, that must be an expensive, valuable dog that somebody's pet and they may pull over. If they perceive it has value, they will often pull over and rescue. If it's a breed that is perceived as being dangerous, so maybe a pit bull or a Rottweiler.
I was chased by a wolf the other day.
A wolf or a
With a
bobcat, or if they see that something being dangerous in their mind, they're not going to pull over because of the fear. But if it's a cat that's trotting down the sidewalk, they often won't even notice it because it's a cat. Not only because it's just a cat, but because cats live outdoors and they see them all the time, and they don't think that it's unusual to be unattended. So it really becomes more difficult for a cat owner when they're looking for a missing cat, because oftentimes, again, many of the cats that go missing are missing because, and even outdoor cats are missing because they get displaced out of their own territory and they end up 5 houses down or 2 blocks over, and they just establish a new territory over there, but they're astray now or end up in a feral cat colony, but they went missing from a home over here that assumed that their cat ran away, and they don't realize the cat's that close.
Wow. Yeah. Well, what a wonderful calling that you have found to reunite people and their pets, especially in this day and time when people are deciding to have pets instead of children.
Yeah.
I would think that they're becoming even more precious to those who do lose them.
There are many people that when they contact us, you can tell that cat or that dog is their sole source of unconditional love, which is really sad. But I just know that God has called me to do this work and to have, I'm just so delighted that I have the passion and compassion that I have, and the giftings that I have for, that I came from a background in law enforcement, in training search dogs and in search and rescue and understanding the science involved in finding missing people. And all I did was I took what already exists in SAR, in search and rescue for people, applied it towards missing pets, and found that it works. Just as veterinary medicine mirrors the medical treatment for humans, I just mirrored what we're already doing for people. So I did some great pioneering work, but really it already existed. To be honest, it really shocked me. It's like, why me? Or how come this hadn't been developed before now? It makes so much sense. And really what hasn't made sense to me is the struggle I've gone through all these years to see it developed. Because still there's so many states and so many communities where we have nobody trained, no pet detectives. New York City.
Boy, what a place.
You would think we would have 10 pet detectives there, not even one. There was so much focus, and one of the most frustrating things, because, again, Missing Pet Partnership, we're unfunded, and we've almost gone under several times. Because there's such a need, but the funding that's out there for animal organizations, you can get grants from some of the big foundations for spay and neuter, TNR, fostering and adoption programs, and feral cats. And yet when we go and apply, we don't qualify. We don't fit in. We're kind of like a square peg trying to fit in a round hole with the programs and the work that we do. But we keep plugging along and trying to look for funding and partnerships and the ability we just want to see more lost pets found. But we need people and funding to do that. So.
Well, that is a wonderful note to leave this on, because I've seen your passion here, and I'm hoping that others will see your passion and see the huge potential that there would be in their communities.
Yeah.
Just to be able to reunite these people and their pets and to garner the goodwill for all of the other things that they want to do. I mean, this is such a win-win situation. It just, I can see why you're frustrated, because it's like, why doesn't anybody understand
I know
that this can work?
And I really, really want to find, you know, like I said, some organized cat groups, and that, and even if you're thinking in terms of, well, we don't have the time, you'll be able to recruit. Trust me when I say, when you start talking about, we're going to train a dog to find lost cats, you're going to find some dog people that may not be cat people, but they will want to come and volunteer because they'll want to handle the dog. And like I said, when you go out in these cases and you're using the investigative tools and you're looking for the evidence, and it's yeah, I'll be showing a video tomorrow in my class on, and during the training class I show different videos, because we've been on Animal Planet and some other things where they come along with us on an investigation, and you know, we're looking for hair fiber, we understand predator behaviors and looking for tracks, and so it's an investigation, and but you have to be trained to do it, but yeah, wow. So get involved.
Oh, thank you so. Oh no, go
One
ahead.
last thing I will say, that the caveat, I guess you would say, is one of the pet detectives that we have that's in the Phoenix area put this, I think, she described it to the T. She said, I got into the pet detective work thinking I wanted to work with animals, but I found that I'm working for animals, but with people. Wow. So truly, if you find that you hate people and you love animals, then maybe you don't want to get into this, because again, you're working one-on-one with the pet owner, but you are working on behalf, and when you find that cat and get it back to the owner, it's like the best thing. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Everyone, thank you for joining us. This has been the Cat Chat Show. You can find us at catchatshow.com or on iTunes or Stitcher Radio.